Okay, I'm going to get started by just welcoming everyone. Welcome to Wat Tung. Nice to see everyone here this morning. Welcome to everyone who's joining online as well. Today is our group learning program where I come together with students, helping them to understand the path to enlightenment as taught by the Buddha. The Buddha taught how to attain this enlightened mental state where the mind is completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. You'll be able to train your mind to get to the point where you no longer experience any discontent feelings. By the time you get to enlightenment, you won't experience any anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. This is occurring through training of the mind. It's not about a bunch of beliefs or rites and rituals and ceremonies, worship or rules or things like that. If you've been exposed to those kinds of things, that's not how the Buddha actually taught, and that's not the things that he actually taught. So I'm going to share with you guys today some meditation where I'll guide you in a meditation session. And then afterwards, I'm going to share a topic from our book, which is titled Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. Each Sunday, I go chapter by chapter, helping students to be able to understand the path that the Buddha taught. Today's topic is chapter 3, which is titled Enlightenment. What is enlightenment? This is where you learn what this mental state is. So I'm going to teach you all the ins and outs of what this enlightened mental state is, because then somebody can actually more easily navigate their way to it. If you didn't understand what enlightenment is, you wouldn't be able to actually navigate your way to it. So I'm going to share that with you after our meditation. So again, welcome to those of you here. Welcome to everyone joining online as well. If you'd like to join for the meditation, the way that I start this is with some chanting to be able to ease into the meditation. And if you'd like to chant along, you're more than welcome to. We have chanting sheets over there on the cabinet. You're welcome to help yourself and get a chanting sheet. You'll be able to chant along with the group because it actually helps to ease your mind into meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation itself. During the lifetime of the Buddha, he actually chanted twice a week with his students. And what they used it for was to commit the teachings to memory. This was a learning tool, a learning device. Where today we have books, audiobooks, videos, podcasts, things like this. They didn't actually have that 2,500 years ago. So they needed to recite the teachings orally in order to commit the teachings to memory, in order to be able to then practice the teachings, because everything the Buddha taught was oral. So if you choose to chant along, just understand that this isn't a rite, ritual, ceremony, worship, or prayer, anything like that. You can see that from the origins of chanting, that it was never used that way. Even though today there might be people that think of it that way, that's not the way that the Buddha taught it. And what you would like to do is get back to as close to what the Buddha taught as possible, because that's what's actually going to lead to your enlightenment. All these misunderstandings that you see in the world is not going to actually lead to your enlightenment. If you end up getting one of these chanting sheets, you're going to see some English translations of these chants, and this is helping you to be able to see what the chanting actually is and what you're actually chanting. You'll see a lot of appreciation, gratitude, and respect for the Buddha. And because of that, I don't think that the Buddha even created these chants himself. They were probably created by his students, either during his life or after his death, because the Buddha wouldn't have walked around and said, here, chant these chants to me out of respect for me. This would be ego or arrogance if somebody chose to do this. And by the time you get to enlightenment, you don't think of yourself as being above people or below people. Instead, he would have thought of himself as being equal to everybody. That's how an enlightened being thinks. But if you learn from a teacher how to move from anger, sadness, frustration, and all these other discontent feelings to the peaceful and joyful mental state that is enlightenment, this teacher didn't want anything from you or expect anything from you. They were just helping you out of the kindness of their heart. You'd probably have a lot of appreciation, gratitude, and respect for that person too. So that's why I think these chants actually came from his students. So you're welcome to chant along, and you're going to see more benefit as you ease into the meditation. For those of you guys that are online, you can get this from our website at buddhadailywisdom.com. You can click on free books, and if you go down towards the middle of that page, you're going to see the free resources there. And the very first one is the chanting sheet. In terms of what we're going to be doing after the chanting, I'm going to be guiding you. I'm going to essentially be teaching you or instructing you how to meditate while we're actually meditating together. So you hear me kind of guiding you in the meditation. But then there's going to be a period of time of quietness where we're all just meditating together. Everybody here at the temple and anybody joining online, we'll just all be meditating. And during this period of time of quietness, I'm sure you're going to hear occasional sounds. You might hear a car go by, a dog barking, a bird chirping, someone here might cough or sneeze. This is all normal. If you're in meditation with a craving for permanent silence, when you hear a sound, it'll cause your mind to be annoyed or frustrated. So if you understand that the world is impermanent and things are constantly changing, then when you hear that sound, you'll know that it's going to arise, it's going to change, and it's going to fade away. But if you're in meditation with a craving for permanent silence while you're living in an impermanent world, you'll cause your mind to be annoyed or frustrated. This is why the mind experiences these feelings, and this is why you can eliminate them. Because oftentimes people think it's the outside world that causes these feelings. You might think it's your mom and dad that are frustrating you, or your brothers and sisters are annoying you, or your boss is irritating you. This isn't actually true. It's your own mind that's causing these feelings, and that's why you can eliminate it through training of the mind. Whereas if it was other people causing these feelings, you'd never actually be able to eliminate them. So you're going to hear sounds in meditation, and you can just understand that this is normal. This is the way the world works, that the world is impermanent. These things are going to arise, they're going to change, and they're going to fade away. Then there's going to come out of the meditation with some more chanting. And that's where I'll start today's class, helping you guys to understand what enlightenment is. That way you'll be able to understand what this mental state is, and you'll be able to more easily navigate your way to it. In terms of your body position for meditation, there's 4 positions that the Buddha taught: seated, lying, standing, and walking. And you would learn these different positions at different times in your journey to enlightenment. It's kind of like assembling a tool belt, and you use these different tools at different times. So oftentimes people are learning in the seated position. So I'll start you out with that, helping you to understand that a little bit, just introducing you to it. But just understand there's these other positions that are available to you, and you would learn these in different retreats and courses as part of your journey to enlightenment, because you'll use them and need them in different situations. So if you're on the floor, in a chair, a bench, a sofa, a wheelchair, you can sit however you like. There's not just one way to sit. What I'm going to share with you are just recommendations or suggestions for you to consider, and you can use anything that I'm sharing, or you could just come up with something on your own, as long as the body's comfortable. You're not interested in the body being painful or luxurious. You'd like it to be in the middle where it's comfortable. That way you can actively train the mind. So if you're on the floor, you might have some cushions under your rear. And then if you're going to bring your legs together in the cross leg position, you might just decide to do that lightly. Whereas if they're real tight, it can impede the circulation in the lower body and cause pain. Your hands and arms, the Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. If this is comfortable for you, you could use it, but it's not about everyone doing it the same way. Some people like to put their palms on their thighs or on their knees. Some people put their palms up, or you might just rest your hands comfortably in your lap. And sometimes people even like to put their legs off the mat. This gets your hips up in the air, and it lessens the angle at the hips, the knees, and the ankles, again, allowing the circulation to flow. And then the same thing is true for anybody who's in a chair or a bench or a sofa or a wheelchair. You can also sit however you like. Some people like to put their feet flat on the floor or lightly cross at the ankles, but you can see me sitting in a chair here with my legs crossed, so that's an option too. And then you can put your hands and arms wherever you like. In terms of the upper body, it's helpful if this is erect. With the sternum up and the shoulders back, it'll help keep the mind attentive and alert during the meditation. Meditation is a dedicated, active, purposeful training session where you're eliminating certain unwholesome qualities from the mind and you're cultivating certain wholesome qualities in the mind. So you'd like the mind to be attentive and alert during the meditation. Whereas if you were slouched like this, the mind would have a tendency to be dull or lethargic. But if you are real rigid with the upper body, your mind could be overactive or uptight. So you'd like the sternum up and the shoulders back because it will keep the mind attentive and alert so you can actively train the mind. And it'll also make it easy for you to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. So I'm going to do some chanting to ease into the meditation. You guys are welcome to join in, and then I'll come back in with the guidance to be able to help you. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakawa Bhutang Mahakavanang Apivateami Savakato Mahakavata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Savaka Sankho สังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสเอมะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารนังสัมมุโนสกาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังโอโตภาควาติ Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมหาเขวาโพตังมหาเขวันหังอภิวาเตมิสวากขาโตมหาเขวตาธัมโมธัมมังนัมสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาเขวโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินับโมรัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนับโมรัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนับโมรัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหาเขวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิจาจารนังสัมมุโนสคาโตโรกาวิโตอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสรังพุทโธภาควาติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, welcome to all of you guys. Nice to see everyone here this morning. Welcome to everyone joining online as well. This individual who we refer to as the Buddha, he actually figured out how to get to enlightenment over 2,500 years ago. He was born in modern-day Nepal, and he taught in northeast India. He was born in 563 BC, and he died in 483 BCE. He experienced enlightenment by the time he was 35 years old. He was born as a prince destined to become a king. But at the age of 29, he stepped away from that life and decided to train his mind to be able to get to enlightenment. And over a 6-year period, he actually figured out how to get to enlightenment. So by the age of 35, he'd actually trained his mind to get to enlightenment. It was through gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress that he was able to do this. Sometimes people think that the Buddha sat under a tree, he meditated, and then instantly got to enlightenment. This isn't actually true. He gradually trained his mind to get to this point. And having discovered these teachings and discovered the path to enlightenment, he spent the next 45 years from the age of 35 to 80 helping others to be able to understand this path of how to attain this mental state. And by the time he died, there were countless people who had actually understood how to get to enlightenment, and they were experiencing this mental state. But how could you ever experience enlightenment and actually get to this enlightened mental state if you didn't understand what it was? So what today's class is all about is helping you to understand what enlightenment is, because then by understanding what it is, you can more easily navigate your way to it. In fact, if I said to all of you guys, I said, hey, would you guys like to go to Chiang Rai? The first question you would probably ask me is, well, what is Chiang Rai, right? If I said, hey guys, are you interested in attaining enlightenment? the first question you'd probably ask me is, well, what is enlightenment, if you didn't understand what it was, right? And then if I said, oh, there's this city called Chiang Rai, it's to the north of Chiang Mai, and you kind of drive through the mountains, and then you get over the mountains, and you'll notice this, and you'll notice that, and you'll come into the town, and you'll notice this, and you'll notice that. It takes about 3 hours to get there. And now you have a better understanding of what Chiang Rai is and where it's at, and you'll be able to more easily navigate your way to it as you're making your way to Chiang Rai. But if you didn't understand what it was or where it was or how long it was going to take you to travel there, how could you ever find this city called Chiang Rai or even decide it's a place that you'd like to go? So this path to enlightenment, the ultimate goal is to get to enlightenment. That's what the Buddha is teaching you. But how could you ever decide whether or not this is something you're even interested in attaining if you didn't understand what it is? Or how could you ever navigate your way to it if you didn't understand what it is? So I'm going to teach you what this is. And as I share this with you, you guys are welcome to ask questions, because I'm going to pause a few times throughout my talk to give you guys an opportunity to ask questions about what enlightenment is. If you'd like to ask questions and you're here at the temple, we have microphones in the white bowl in the middle of the room. We also have some up here in the front. You're welcome to get a microphone, bring that back to your seat, press the gray button. You're going to see the lights come on. And if you hold this up to your chin, we'll be able to hear you here at the temple, and they'll be able to hear you online. If you speak here without a microphone, they won't actually be able to hear you online. And then you can keep these microphones with you, because you might have more than one question, or someone around you might have a question, and you can just share the microphone with them. And if you're not using it, if you could turn it off, this will be helpful so that we don't get feedback through the speakers. And then for anybody who's online, you can put your questions into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom electronically, and I'll be able to see that, and then you can unmute your microphone and ask any questions that you like that way. So the first thing I have to share with you about what enlightenment is that it's very challenging for the unenlightened mind to understand what enlightenment is. It's kind of like if you didn't understand what chocolate ice cream is and you've never actually tasted chocolate ice cream, I could sit here all day and explain to you what chocolate ice cream tastes like. And at the end of our conversation, you'll know more about what chocolate ice cream tastes like when we're done with our conversation than you did before. But you're not going to fully understand what chocolate ice cream tastes like until you actually taste it and experience it for yourself. And this is the same thing that's true with this mental state of enlightenment, as I can sit here and explain it to you all day long, and you'll understand it much more after our conversation than you did before our conversation. But you're not going to fully understand what it is until your mind's starting to experience more and more of the qualities of enlightenment. So while I'm going to share with you what enlightenment is and teach you all the ins and outs of it, it's important to understand that by the end of our conversation, you're not going to fully understand it 100%. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't ask questions and you shouldn't try to understand it, but just understand that you won't understand it 100% by the time that we're actually done. In terms of what enlightenment is this is a mental state that is attainable during this life or at death, where the mind is completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. By the time you get to enlightenment, your mind will be unshakable. It'll be steady and stable. There's nothing that can shake up your mind. When your mind's experiencing anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy, your mind is shaken up in that situation. It's uncalm, it's unsteady, it's unstable. And now you're going to tend to make unwise decisions. And as you make those unwise decisions and put them out into the world, it's going to produce unwholesome results for you. So by getting to a point where your mind is steady and stable, it's unshakable, you'll be able to make wise decisions in all situations. There's multiple benefits with this enlightened mental state, which I'm going to share with you here in a moment. But just to kind of give you initial understanding of this mental state, the mind is focused. You have concentration, clarity, and deep memory. The mind will be relaxed and calm, but yet attentive and alert. Sometimes when people think about relaxed and calm, they think like, they're just going to veg out like this and everything's just, I'm so relaxed and calm. Yeah, that's relaxed and calm, right? But this enlightened mental state, the mind is internally relaxed and calm, but yet it's sharp, it's crisp, it's clear, it's attentive, and it's alert. But internally, it's completely relaxed and calm. So this is what enlightenment is. It's a mental state. And you can attain this during this life or at death. And having attained enlightenment during this life, you will experience those mental qualities for the rest of your life. It's a permanent mental state. Once you get to enlightenment, your mind can't regress backwards. It's physically impossible for you to experience things like anger, sadness, frustration, and all these other feelings once the mind has actually gotten to enlightenment. And having gotten to enlightenment during your life, now you can experience this wonderful life without having any of those discontent feelings. And your mind will gradually experience this. It's not like 1 minute you're unenlightened and the next minute you're enlightened. It's not like there's a switch that is flipped. Your qualities of enlightenment are gradually enhancing as you're getting closer and closer to it. While we call it attaining enlightenment, one of the ways you might think about it is that the mind is already enlightened, and you just got to get these pollutions out of the way in order to be able to help the mind experience those qualities of the enlightened mind. So maybe think about like there's the sun, and then there's the clouds in front of the sun. And as you slowly peel away the clouds, the rays of the sun are going to slowly start shining through until eventually, wham, there's the sun. It's nice and bright. The only difference in the analogy here is that the clouds are going to eventually come back and block the sun again. But by the time you get to enlightenment, that's not the case. By the time your mind is experiencing this enlightened mental state where you get these pollutions out of the way, your mind, it is impossible for those pollutions to come back ever again. So you'll be experiencing those qualities at all time. So while some people call it attaining enlightenment, one of the ways you might think about it is your mind's already enlightened, but you have these pollutions in the way that are hindering you from being able to experience those qualities. And you can attain this during this life, which would be the ideal, because then you'll get to enjoy the rest of your life in this enlightened mental state. But you can also attain it at death, which is the next best option, because if you attain this at death, you won't be reborn back into the world. There's this cycle of rebirth that the Buddha taught where beings are being reborn continuously over and over and over again. And as you guys heard me share at the beginning of class, there are no beliefs in the teachings of the Buddha, including the cycle of rebirth and the 5 realms of existence. He taught the hell realm, the animal realm, afflicted spirit realm, which is like ghosts, the human realm, and the heavenly realm. These are all things that he taught for a reason, but you would never be interested in believing in these things. With belief, you don't know what's true or false. You're just believing it because somebody convinced you to believe it, or you convinced yourself to believe it. What the Buddha is teaching you to do is cultivate wisdom. That's how you actually get to enlightenment, through learning, examining, investigating teachings, through reflecting on them to verify if they're true or false, and then you practice those teachings, integrating them into your day-to-day life, making wise decisions through them. And you can't get to wisdom by believing in something. So the cycle of rebirth, the 5 realms of existence, all these kinds of things, you can independently verify that they're true. Right now, you might be believing that you only have one life, but you don't have any evidence that you only have one life, other than the fact that right now you can't remember perhaps your previous lives. But you might have had things like deja vu, where you've had these memories that have come to the surface of your mind, where something that you're doing feels utterly familiar to you. But you know it wasn't in this life that you've actually done this particular thing. This is your residual memories coming to the forefront of your mind. So there's multiple ways for you to independently verify the cycle of rebirth. It's not something that I suggest people do right up front at the beginning of their journey to enlightenment, but just understand you're never interested in believing in this. But by the time you get to enlightenment, you won't experience rebirth coming back into the world over and over and over again. Because if there's birth, there's going to be sorrow, there's going to be grief, despair, there's going to be aging and death. These are things that you will experience. But if you don't experience birth, then you won't experience aging, sickness, death, sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair, right? So this is understanding of enlightenment, is that if you get to this enlightened mental state, you will enjoy that mental state for the rest of your life, and then you won't experience rebirth. What happens next for an enlightened being after death? The Buddha leaves it as an undeclared teaching, that he talks in his teachings, of course, that if you don't get to enlightenment, you will experience rebirth, but he never uses that as a way to guilt, shame, or fear you into learning and practicing his teachings, because his teachings are to help you eliminate guilt, shame, and fear, and all these other discontent feelings. He's not going to use guilt, shame, and fear in order to motivate you to eliminate guilt, shame, and fear. That's not the way that a Buddha teaches. But just understand that this cycle of rebirth is part of the teachings, and it it helps you to be able to understand that if you get to enlightenment, that you're not going to experience rebirth over and over and over and over again. And this is what we have been experiencing in the past. And as you get closer and closer to enlightenment and you're lifting these pollutions out of the mind, there may come a time where you actually start experiencing some more profound memories and experiences of your past lives. And if you do, then your mind doesn't need to be shaken up during that period of time. You can just know that this is normal. Whereas if you didn't understand that these residual memories that you were having were from previous lives, it could really shake you up. So enlightenment is this mental state that you can attain where you've eliminated 100% of all discontent feelings. There's no longer any of those discontent feelings in the mind. The mind will be free of what's called craving, anger, and ignorance. These are called the three poisons or the three unwholesome roots. This is a high-level way to talk about the pollutions of the mind. I'm going to share with you guys a more detailed description of the pollutions in the mind that the Buddha discovered, because that's what's actually keeping the mind in the unenlightened state. But when we talk about it more as a high level, we refer to it as craving, anger, and ignorance, or the three unwholesome roots, or the three fires, or oftentimes referred to as the three poisons. Those will have been eliminated out of the mind. The mind is being purified of the causes and conditions that are keeping it in the unenlightened state. Those things are being uprooted through training of the mind. So while enlightenment is the mental state that you attain, the path to enlightenment is a purification of the mind, where you're purifying the mind through training of the mind and uprooting the pollutions that are in the mind. Sometimes people refer to enlightenment as happiness or ultimate bliss. While there's plenty of happiness in the enlightened mental state, I don't refer to it as that, because you understand what happiness is. Maybe if you get a raise at work, you get so happy and excited. Or maybe if your mom's going to come visit you and make some special dish of food that is your favorite food from when you were a child, you might get so happy and excited about that. Or maybe you wake up in the morning and you see it's sunny outside and you get so happy and excited about that. This is what's called conditional happiness. That based on some condition, your mind is then going to experience happiness. But that happiness is temporary. It arises, it changes, and it fades away because it's conditional. And that sun is not permanent. So if you base your feelings on the sun, that means when the sun changes to rain, you'll be sad or frustrated. Or if you get really happy when your bank account balance is up here, when it goes down here, you'll be sad or frustrated. So that's not the happiness that you're experiencing in the enlightened mental state. The happiness that you're experiencing is unconditioned happiness or unconditioned joy, that there doesn't need to be any condition met in order for you to experience that the mind is cheerful and bright and glad and uplifted. It's radiant at all times during your day. And because there's no condition that's causing it, there's nothing that can take that away. That's why the mind is unshakable, that you'll be experiencing happiness continuously all throughout your day. From the moment you wake up all day long and when you go to sleep, you're experiencing happiness where the mind is cheerful and bright and uplifted, but it's not this conditional happiness where you're bouncing off the walls because you got a raise, or your mom's coming to visit you, or you got a new car and you're so happy, yay. It's not that kind of happiness. So sometimes people refer to enlightenment as happiness or ultimate bliss. And what I would say is those people might be experiencing what we refer to as the jhanas. Prior to getting to the first stage of enlightenment, there's 4 preliminary phases that your mind will go through. We refer to these as the jhanas. These are enhanced qualities of mind that you'll be experiencing at all times during your day. And as your mind's moving through these jhanas, you can experience this ultimate bliss or this excitement that's in the mind. Especially in the first and second jhana, you can experience this bliss that's in the mind. And it's like night and day from when you were off the path to enlightenment to when you're experiencing these jhanas, these enhanced qualities of mind. So some people can think that they're actually enlightened when they're in the jhanas. They're not enlightened yet, but they think they are. So they're actually describe what they're experiencing as enlightenment. And this is where they'll sometimes call enlightenment as ultimate bliss, because that's what they're experiencing. You'll even hear some of these people explain that enlightened people, enlightened beings, still experience things like sadness or anger or frustration or stress or anxiety or things like this. And it's not actually true. They think they're enlightened. They're describing what they're experiencing as enlightenment, but because they're not actually experiencing enlightenment, they're misunderstanding what enlightenment is. I can assure you that enlightened beings do not experience anger, sadness, frustration, and all these other feelings. But if you Googled right now and you said, does an enlightened being experience sadness and anger and frustration? Google will tell you yes. Even Google doesn't even understand, because of course, Google is just understanding what it is that people told it, right? Because it's just a search engine. It's just technology, right? But I can assure you an enlightened being doesn't experience those feelings of anger, sadness, frustration, and others. So what you're experiencing in the enlightened mental state is not conditional happiness or ultimate bliss, but instead you're experiencing unconditional happiness, unconditioned joy, where there doesn't need to be any condition met in order for the mind to experience that happiness. So this is what enlightenment is. The advantages of getting to enlightenment is that the mind's completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. It's a permanent mental state where your mind physically is incapable of experiencing anger, sadness, frustration, and others. If you tried as an enlightened being to force your mind to experience anger, you actually wouldn't be able to do it. It's impossible for the mind to experience it. You would have a high degree of focus, concentration, memory, and clarity of mind. Because when you uproot those pollutions out of the mind's now going to perform optimally. But when you have these pollutions in the mind, your mind is going to be hindered and you're going to lack focus, concentration, clarity, and memory. So if you're noticing that, you know that your mind is unenlightened. You will have eliminated all these discontent feelings. And this is a real advantage, because think about all the time that you sit around being irritable and grumpy and frustrated and brokenhearted and feeling guilty and shameful and all these other feelings. It's just a waste of time. You can actually opt out of this, just like an email list where you can unsubscribe and you can say, nope, not interested in your emails anymore. You can do the same thing with anger and frustration. Unfortunately, it's not a button that you just press. It'd be wonderful if it was, right? But it's not that. It's gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. But you can unsubscribe to these feelings. You can say, I'm not interested in this anymore. One of the ways you might think about it is a human being can evolve to a higher consciousness. Just like a snake or a lizard can evolve to a better species, the human beings can do the same thing. Human beings can evolve to a better species where collectively we're not experiencing anger and sadness and frustration any longer. But you just need to have the wisdom of how to do that. You've learned the wisdom of how to clean your body. Your parents taught you that. And you know that it's wise to clean your body every day. But you haven't learned necessarily how to clean the mind because our parents didn't understand that. And there's more than just the body here. This being who you are, sure, there's a physical body, but there's a mind as well. And if you're walking around for several days, weeks, months, or years without cleaning this body, you'd be pretty uncomfortable. Well, now you understand why you're experiencing uncomfortableness in the mind, because if you've been walking around for several days, weeks, months, or years without cleaning the mind, you're going to feel very uncomfortable. So you can learn the wisdom of how to clean this mind. Even though you didn't learn that growing up as a child, you can learn it as an adult, and now you can experience the elimination of these discontent feelings. Slowly but surely, these will eliminate. And you'll notice in situations where you were once angry and frustrated and agitated, that you'll have those same experiences and your mind's not having those feelings. And that's how you know you're making progress on the path. You'll get to the point where you have this deep wisdom about the world around you. That's what the Buddha is doing, is he's teaching you the natural laws of how the world truly functions. That's what we mean when we say awakening to enlightenment, is you're cultivating wisdom about the world around you and how the world truly functions. Because in the unenlightened state, the mind lacks wisdom of how the world actually functions. And that's why it struggles and has difficulties. That's what the stress and anxiety and all these other feelings are, is the mind is struggling to live in a world that it doesn't understand. By the time you get to enlightenment, you will have deep wisdom about the world that other people don't understand. And you won't be struggling because you can navigate the world peacefully through these natural laws. You'll notice that you have politeness, kindness, friendliness, and respect in all situations. That in the unenlightened state, you will find that very difficult. There'll be certain situations where you can be polite, kind, friendly, and respectful, but there's going to be certain situations where you find that very difficult. But by the time you get to enlightenment, that's not the case. You can be polite, kind, friendly, respectful in every single situation because the mind is now liberated. It's now free. You'll notice that you're not causing harm in the world around you. And because of this, your relationships are really blossoming. They're at ease. Because in the unenlightened state, you're going to have a certain amount of bitterness, harshness, and hostility in your mind. And that's going to come out in your relationships. And it's going to damage your relationships with your parents, with your siblings, your life partner, your children, people like this. You're going to find it to be a little bit of a struggle in certain relationships. But by the time you get to enlightenment, that's not the case. All your relationships are harmonious because you're able to function in a way where you're being polite, kind, friendly, respectful in all situations, and you're not causing harm. And again, this takes gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. Oftentimes when you're having difficulties in relationships, people think the way to solve that is to change the other person. You might be trying to change your parents or change your siblings or your life partner or your children. You can't get to peace and joy by changing other people. You're going to need to change your mind. And by working on your mind and training your mind, you can get to the point where all your relationships are harmonious. So these are the advantages of actually getting to enlightenment. You can get to the point where you don't even experience a bad mood anymore, that it's physically impossible for you to have a bad mood by the time you get to enlightenment. The way that you attain enlightenment is you start with these core central teachings. This is something that I teach as part of this program. In fact, next week, I'm going to be moving into chapter 4, where I'm going to be starting to work through all of these teachings. Within this program, I teach each Sunday and Wednesday over a 7-month period. I'm going to be teaching all these teachings and more. So you can gradually learn this each Sunday and each Wednesday, just gradually learning. Whether you're here at the temple or you're online, you can come into our classes through online, or you can even watch the recording if you can't attend based on the time zone that you're in. So you would need to learn the 3 universal truths, the 4 noble truths, the Eightfold Path, and the 5 precepts. And you're not believing these teachings, but you're investigating and examining them. You're reflecting on them to verify if they're true or they're false, and then you're practicing them, integrating them into your day-to-day life. These aren't rules. They aren't commandments. It's not a bunch of rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship, or prayer. The Buddha is explaining to you the way the world is. He's not explaining to you the way the world should be. He's explaining to you the way the world is so that you can heal from what hurts you, so that you never need to hurt ever again. But what's hurting you is not the outside world. It's what's going on in the inner world. So these teachings are going to guide you in this path of inner growth and inner development. One of the ways you might think of the teachings of the Buddha is as a self-help program, that you're gradually developing this being to become a better and better being. You're going to need to learn something called the Brahma Viharas. These are 4 healthy mental states where there's certain symptoms in your mind and you apply a prescription. This is where the Buddha kind of gets the reputation of being like a doctor, because there's certain symptoms that he notices in the mind, and then there's a certain prescription that you apply or an antidote. But you are your own best doctor. If you are living with this mind day in and day out, you can notice when you're having those symptoms that the Buddha taught, and then you can notice what the solution is, and you can apply that. And now you can actually fix your mind. So the Buddha teaches you how to do this through his teachings. Then there's something called the 10 fetters. I'm going to just introduce you to those here in a moment. These are the 10 pollutions in the mind. There's something called the 7 factors of enlightenment. This is actually not to determine whether you are enlightened or aren't enlightened. This is actually a tool to fine-tune the mind. And this is something that you would learn as part of your journey to enlightenment as well. And then there's extensive meditation training. This is the core central teachings, but there's other things beyond this that you would need to be able to get to enlightenment. But this is where someone usually gets started, with something like this. So do you guys have any questions up to this point? Anything you guys would like to ask? Remember, we have the microphones here. And then for those of you guys online, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. Anything you guys would like to ask? Yes, sir. We have microphones right there.
Thank you, David, again. So my question is, because you practice meditation for many years, so when normal people like us can be enlightened, how many years or what stage?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe someone will be very fast. Someone will be after long years, still not be enlightened.
Okay. So first of all, I'm also a normal person too. You said, how about normal people? Like as if there's a difference between you and I. We're all the same. We're all human beings, right? So an enlightened person would never say that they're enlightened, but you should never look at an enlightened being as being different in terms of they're not normal and we are normal people, right? You guys are all normal, just like enlightened beings are normal as well. The amount of time that it takes for each person to get to enlightenment is going to be different, because you come to the path to enlightenment with different levels of pollution. And also your dedication, determination, and diligence on the path is going to be different from person to person. There could be a certain amount of complacency, right? So you can't really give a schedule of how long it's going to take for everybody to get to enlightenment. It's going to take you a while, though. Even the Buddha, it took him 6 years to get to enlightenment. So it's going to take you some time to be able to get to enlightenment. But the difference here is that this is a permanent fix, right? Sometimes we're used to doing something and it's only fun while we're doing it, and then when it's over, it's not fun anymore and it's kind of useless maybe. This isn't the case. The way that I think about it is like when you climb a mountain, you get to the top of the mountain and you see a beautiful view and you get fresh air, but then eventually you got to go back down the mountain. And it's like, all that work, and I only got to enjoy being up here for 30 minutes or whatever it was, however long you're up at the top of the mountain. And then you got to come back down. But that's not the case with this. You actually climb this mountain, but then you get to enjoy the view and the fresh air for the rest of your life, because your mind is going to be experiencing that enlightened mental state. So the amount of time that it takes is different for each person. Yep. There's no way to predict how long it would take for each person. Okay, I don't see any other questions anywhere. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you guys these 10 pollutions. These are called the 10 fetters. The reason why they're called the fetters is that during the lifetime of the Buddha, if you were someone they were trying to keep confined to a certain area, they would attach a fetter around your ankle. This was like a prisoner, where today we put prisoners in jail cells. What they do is they would attach a shackle and a chain and a ball, and then it would keep you out in this field. This is called a fetter, and it would keep that person confined in that particular area. So when the Buddha discovers these 10 pollutions in the mind, he refers to them as fetters, because it's keeping the mind trapped in this unenlightened state, experiencing anger and sadness and frustration over and over and over again. So I'll introduce you to these so you can see that your mind definitely has these fetters in the mind. And then all the rest of the path to enlightenment that the Buddha teaches you is all about how to uproot these fetters out of the mind, how to get rid of these pollutions. That's what he's teaching you to do through all of his teachings. It's targeting these individual pollutions to be able to help you uproot them, whether it's meditation, whether it's things like the Eightfold Path or the 5 precepts or any other thing that he's teaching you to get rid of these pollutions out of the mind. So I'm just going to kind of lightly introduce them to you today, but then we have other programs where we go into them in detail, where you can understand what they are, the symptoms of them, how to eliminate them, and how to know that you've actually eliminated them. But when you're first getting started on the path, you're kind of more generally training the mind with some more basic and foundational teachings. And then as your mind's starting to move into these enhanced qualities of mind, referred to as the jhanas, that's where you kind of pivot and you start focusing on these more directly. But let me just introduce them to you. So there's the lower fetters and then there's the higher fetters. Personal existence view is where the mind has confusion or misunderstanding, thinking that this body or this mind is you and who you are. The mind clings to a self-image or a self-identity, thinking that this is who you are. And now you can only be happy if people perceive you in the way that you want to be perceived. The mind has a longing, a yearning to be perceived by others in a certain way. So you can only be happy when you're being perceived that way. So for example, if you've ever been at, say, a social event and you spilt something on your clothing and you were embarrassed in that situation, that's your personal existence view. You're clinging to this body, thinking this is who you are, and wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way. And you can only be happy if you're being perceived the way you want to be perceived. And if you're not being perceived that way, you're experiencing some type of discontentedness. Or say maybe you've looked in the mirror and you saw a wrinkle or a pimple or a mole, or you saw a gray hair and you were shaken up by that. That's your personal existence view. holding on to this body, wanting it to be permanent, and now you can only be happy if you're being perceived the way you want to be perceived. Or maybe you stood in front of your closet and you thought, who am I going to see today? And how do I want to look? And you maybe put on some clothes and you looked in the mirror and you said, no, that's not the clothes I want to wear. And then you put on another set of clothes and you're like, no, that's not how I want to look. And you put on another pair and you're like, okay, now I feel comfortable to go outside. This is the personal existence view. Or maybe you were like me when I was a kid. I got out the gel and the mousse and I would run it through my hair and I would try to get every little hair in exactly the right spot before I would go out to school. I didn't feel comfortable going to school unless every little hair was in exactly the right spot. And sometimes I would do this for so long I'd miss the school bus on the way to school, right? So this is the mind clinging to this body, wanting it to be permanent and only feeling comfortable if people are perceiving you the way you want to be perceived. But because you live in an impermanent world, this body can't look any particular way permanently. It's not possible. And then the same thing happens with your self-identity. Based on your culture, your ethnicity, your sexual orientation, your nationality, your job or occupation, you might be clinging to any number of things in your mind of who you think you are as a person. And you can only be happy if people perceive you the way you want to be perceived. So say, for example, you have in your mind, I am American, or I am Chinese, or I am Lithuanian, or I am German, or any of this I am around your culture, your ethnicity, your sexual orientation, your nationality, your job or occupation, or any number of things. Well, let's just say you're at a restaurant and 2 tables over, somebody's talking about your nationality very fondly. And they're like, all Americans are lovely and kind and warm and gentle. Well, now you're going to get so excited about that because in your mind, you identify with I am American. But then it's only a matter of time because of impermanence as somebody says something degrading and disrespectful. And now you hear that. And now you're frustrated and angry and irritated, right? This is the mind's personal existence view, clinging to an identity. Or say you've ever been in a relationship with a boyfriend or girlfriend or husband or wife, and your mind was thinking, I am a husband, I am a wife, I am a boyfriend, I'm a girlfriend. And as long as you guys were together, there was a certain amount of comfort. But when you guys broke up, your mind might have felt like you wanted to hurry up and get right back into another relationship because your mind didn't identify with I am single. Your mind didn't identify that way. So you felt like the way to solve this uncomfortableness of being single is to hurry up and get right back into another relationship. But that's not going to solve it. What's going to solve this is you got to let go of this clinging to this idea that I am a boyfriend, I'm a girlfriend, I'm a husband, I'm a wife. So again, this can happen with your culture, your ethnicity, your sexual orientation, your nationality, your job or occupation. You can cling to any of these things as who you think you are. And now your mind's shaken up when those things aren't intact. So there's a solution here, but that's something that I'm going to be teaching later in this program by the time we get to chapter 16, because you need to have all the foundational teachings first before you really target this. Then there's something called doubt. What doubt is where you have doubt about the teachings of the Buddha and the ability of them to actually attain enlightenment. Where when people come to the path to enlightenment, they typically have doubt. And if you have doubt about these teachings right now, that's fine. Pretty much everybody has doubt before they ever come to the path to enlightenment. Because how could you have confidence in the teachings if you don't even know what the teachings are? You've never even studied them, right? But the way you get rid of this doubt is not through blind belief or faith or anything like that. Instead, the way you get rid of your doubt about the teachings is you investigate and examine them. If you investigate and examine the teachings, then you independently verify whether they're true or false. Then you practice them, seeing the improvement that they're creating for the condition of your mind in your life. You'll get to the point where you have no doubt that these teachings are working to improve the condition of your mind in your life, because you know what it's like to be angry and frustrated and all these other discontent feelings. And when you're in certain situations where that's not happening anymore, then you'll know that it's these teachings that are leading you to that point. So you'll get to the point where you have confidence in the Buddha, you'll have confidence in his teachings, confidence in the community that you're part of, you'll have confidence in your teacher, and you'll have confidence in your own ability to get to enlightenment. But prior to that, you'll actually have doubts in your mind, and that's normal. And if that's where you are right now, if I was you, I would embrace that doubt. I would be like, you know what? Yeah, I doubt the teachings. This isn't true for me, but I'm speaking as if I'm you, right? You could say, yeah, I doubt the teachings of the Buddha. I don't know whether they actually lead to enlightenment or not. And now you can actually harness that doubt. You can turn it into an inquisitive mind where you roll up your sleeves and you sink your teeth in and you really investigate the teachings. And that's what's going to help you to be able to ultimately eliminate this, because then you'll actually be able to see that the teachings are true. I know with 100% certainty that these teachings lead exactly where the Buddha said they do, to this enlightened mental state. But in order for you to get rid of your doubt, you're going to need to investigate the teachings. And that way you'll be able to see that they actually lead to this enlightened mental state. Then there's something called wrong behavior and observances. What this is there's two sides to it. What wrong behavior is where in the unenlightened state, there's a certain amount of unwise moral conduct that you have, where you're maybe being bitter and harsh and hostile to certain people, where you're making unwise decisions about how you interact with people. And as long as you're doing that through your intentions, speech, and actions, or your livelihood, it's producing unwholesome results for you. Because when you're being bitter and harsh and hostile towards people, that's all just coming back to you. Right? So how could you ever get to peace and joy if you constantly have this bitterness and harshness and hostility that's coming back to you? So you're going to need to clean up your moral conduct where you're not treating people in unwise ways. Because the way you might think about it is like if there's an oil pipe and it's busted and spewing oil all over the world, you'd like to shut down that oil pipe because it's making this mess, and you'd like to eliminate this spewing of oil all over the world. So the Buddha is teaching you in his core central teachings how to improve your moral conduct so you're no longer causing harm to others in the way that you have speech, actions, in your livelihood. And when you get your practice up to the point of the Eightfold Path, then you've eliminated the wrong observances where you're no longer functioning in a way where your moral conduct is unwise. And this is going to produce more and more peacefulness in your day-to-day life. Because again, as long as you put out harshness and bitterness, it's all going to come back to you. You can look at your relationships where you're frustrated and angry and irritated and you're being bitter and harsh and hostile. Those people are being bitter and harsh and hostile right back to you. Because as long as you put that out, that's what's going to come back to you. But if you clean that up more and more, you're functioning in wise ways. Now you'll see slowly but surely, those people will also treat you in wise ways too, that you won't have that bitterness and harshness coming back to you. Then there's another part of this called wrong observances. What this is where the mind thinks that rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship, or prayer is going to lead to some beneficial results in your life. So people might do rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship, where what's ultimately going to lead to the benefit of your life is cultivation of wisdom. That's the whole reason why the mind is in the unenlightened state, is because it lacks wisdom about the natural laws around you. So as long as somebody believes that rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship are going to lead to some beneficial result in their life, they're not understanding the core central problem in the mind, which is the lack of wisdom. So there's no amount of water that I can sprinkle on you that's going to help improve your life, because it doesn't help you to cultivate wisdom. There's no amount of strings that I can tie on your wrist that's going to help you to cultivate wisdom. There's no amount of wafers that you can put on your tongue and actually eat, or any of these other rituals that you see in the world, that it's not going to help you to cultivate wisdom and make better decisions and thus experience better results in your life. If you're looking to experience better results in your life, you're going to need to cultivate wisdom, make better decisions, and then you'll experience improved results in your day-to-day life. And there's no rites, rituals, ceremonies, or worship that's going to allow you to actually cultivate wisdom. So you need to get to the point where you understand that rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship isn't leading to improvement in your day-to-day life. Whether you choose to do these things or not, it's a choice for you to make. Nobody's going to force you or control you in this path. It's your life, it's your decisions, and it's your results. Maybe you're going to a family event, and maybe you guys are going to the temple or the mosque, or maybe to church or the synagogue or something like this. And when you show up, maybe everybody's doing rites and rituals and ceremonies and worship, and maybe you're just going with the family because afterwards maybe you're going to some event or you're going out to eat together. And maybe you sit there and you see that everybody's doing these things, and maybe you're singing and having a good time or whatever it is that you're doing. But in your mind, you understand that these rituals, these ceremonies, this worship, this isn't what's going to lead to improvement in your day-to-day life, that you need to make the wise decisions through cultivating wisdom and through training your mind. So that's how you would understand this wrong observances, is that you need to get to the point where you understand that what's going to transform your life is the cultivation of wisdom, not ceremonies or rituals. So whenever you see these things associated with the teachings of the Buddha, you can understand that it's not from the Buddha. Those are changes that people have made to his teachings after his death. And you'll see plenty of those things in the world, because the vast majority of the world doesn't actually study the original teachings of the Buddha. They actually are studying this oral tradition that is handed down from person to person to person, and it's been changed. So you'll see lots of rituals and ceremonies associated with the teachings of the Buddha, but that's not what he actually taught, because it doesn't cultivate wisdom in the mind. Then there's something called sensual desire. What this is where inside your mind, the mind has this longing, yearning for permanently agreeable contact through the eyes, ears, nose, the tongue, the body, and then the mind itself. That the mind is experiencing contact through these senses, and it wants things to be permanently agreeable. And it can only be happy when it gets what it wants. When it doesn't get what it wants, it experiences painful feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, and others. So here's an example for you with the ears. Let's just say you're sitting at a traffic light and someone pulls up next to you with music that you listen to, and you find it to be agreeable and you really like it. You might be dancing in your seat, right? You might be like, wow, that's my jam. All right. That's really good music. All right. You got good taste, man. All right. Let's go. You might be having a good old time sitting in your seat, right? And you're having these pleasant feelings. Well, then let's just say another car pulls up at a different traffic light. And this is a type of music that you don't like. And you don't listen to this kind of music. And you start getting frustrated or angry or irritated. It's not the music that's causing that. And it's not the person who's playing the music. They're not causing you to be frustrated or annoyed. What's causing you to be frustrated or annoyed is the sensual desire. The mind is craving for permanently agreeable contact through these senses. And now when you hear this sound coming through your ear that you consider to be disagreeable to you, you then get frustrated or angry or irritated. It's the mind itself that's causing these feelings. It's happening with every single sense base. I'll give you another example. Let's just say the nose. Maybe you're walking down the street and you walk past a flower shop and you smell this amazing odor coming out of the flower shop. And you're like, oh my gosh, this is excellent. I could stand here all day and smell this, right? It just smells so great. And now you walk a few more steps and you get a whiff of the sewer. And it's like, oh, and you're repulsed by this and you start complaining and, who did put this out here? Why don't they cover the sewer? Oh my gosh, this is so horrible. It smells blah, 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 right? This is your sensual desire. Your mind's craving for permanently agreeable contact through the nose. Where you live in an impermanent world, you're not going to experience permanently agreeable contact. You're sometimes going to smell flowers and you're sometimes going to smell the sewer. This is normal. But your mind, with that craving for permanence, while you live in an impermanent world, is going to react in a way where you become hostile or harsh or bitter or angry or frustrated. So this is happening through all the sense bases. Essentially what the Buddha is doing is he's giving you an instruction manual to this being who you are. Everything in the world nowadays pretty much has an instruction manual. I have a pitcher of water at home on my desk, and it probably came with an instruction manual, right? Just a pitcher of water to be able to fill it up with water and pour water out of it, right? But nobody gave you an instruction manual to this being who you are. But that's what the Buddha is doing. When he's explaining to you sensual desire, he's helping you to understand how this being experiences the world. This being who you are is experiencing the world through the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, the body, and then there's the mind itself, where you're experiencing certain pleasant feelings, painful feelings, or neither painful nor pleasant feelings. And it's this sensual desire that your mind's seeing things as either agreeable or disagreeable. And as long as you're experiencing contact with a craving for permanently agreeable contact while you live in an impermanent world, you can't be permanently peaceful and permanently joyful, because it's only a matter of time before you experience disagreeable contact. So the Buddha is teaching you how to uproot this and get it out of the mind. So that way you can experience permanent peace and permanent joy. Because one of the things that happens when your central desire is not getting fulfilled is there's this ill will that can arise. Ill will is the hostility, the bitterness, the harshness. And you might have experienced this multiple times with the people around you, where they're doing that to you, but you're also doing it to them too. That's because your central desire is not getting fulfilled. And when you're experiencing those painful feelings coming up in your mind, you firmly believe that somebody else is causing it. You don't understand that it's sensual desire that's actually causing those painful feelings. So what the mind's ill will do is you'll be bitter and harsh and hostile towards people through your intentions, your speech, and your actions. And now this damages your relationships. So the Buddha is teaching you how to uproot this ill will out of your mind so that you can be harmonious with all the people around you. Because when your central desire isn't getting fulfilled, what you'll tend to do is you'll tend to push people away. This is called aversion, where you're trying to push away people or you're trying to push away a situation, thinking that they are the ones who are causing you to experience these feelings. Or you'll be bitter and harsh and hostile towards them. This is your ill will. Or you will put expectations on people and try to control them and pressure them to do things your way. This is the mind trying to get its central desire fulfilled. And not only is your mind maybe doing this, but people might be actually doing this to you too, where they're pushing you away. They're being bitter, harsh, and hostile to you, or they're putting their expectations on you. But there's a solution here, and that's what the Buddha teaches you. So do you guys have any questions on any of these 5 here that I just shared? No questions? Oh, we have a question here on Zoom. This person is asking, "Hi, David. Does being shy or an introvert or having social anxiety mean you need to work on your personal existence view? Thanks." Yes, that's exactly what causes shyness. Like when someone has stage fright or they have anxiety when they're going to give a presentation at their company or at a customer or something like this, that's personal existence view, because the mind wants to be perceived by others in a certain way. And it's fearful that it's not going to be perceived that way. So it'll have anxiety, right? Or even in the moment, as you're actually presenting to a public, you want to be perceived by others in a certain way. And now the mind is experiencing that shyness or embarrassment or anxiety or stage fright. It's all because of personal existence view.
About sensual desire, because we have 6 senses: eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind. And then what's the difference between body and eyes, ears, nose, and tongue?
Sure. So the body itself can have contact. Like say you have a certain fabric like silk, and you get so happy when you have that. But now let's just say you wear a wool shirt or a wool sweater and you feel itchy and scratchy and you don't like it, or like a turtleneck or something like that. And now you don't like it because you're experiencing contact through the body. So it's not just the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, but it's the body itself and then the mind, because the mind can also be thinking about things in the past or the future. There hasn't been any contact through the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, or body, but you're just thinking about things in the past or the future, and now you experience feelings based on that, where you're worried or fearful because you're thinking about something in the past, or you're really happy and excited because of thinking about something in the past. And the same thing can happen with the future too, that there hasn't been any contact through all the other senses, but it's just your mind itself having central desire. Now thinking about those things, you end up experiencing conditioned feelings. Mm-hmm. All right. Yeah, you have a question?
Thank you. Actually, I have 2 questions. One is the continuous question about the enlightened. Do you think yourself is perfectly enlightened one and also rightly self-awakened one?
Say the second part.
Yeah, right self-awakened one.
Right self-awakened one. Are you talking about the chance?
Yeah.
Okay, let me answer one question at a time. So an enlightened being is never going to say that they're enlightened, because that would be arrogance and pride and boastfulness. And that comes from the mind's conceit or the ego. And an individual who's gotten to enlightenment, they don't have ego any longer. So they're not going to say to someone, yes, I am enlightened. Also, you would just have to believe that person. And an enlightened being isn't interested in people having belief. Instead, you would need to know the truth so you can discover whether this person is enlightened for yourself or not. And an enlightened being also isn't going to say, no, they're not enlightened, because that would be lying, right? So an enlightened being isn't going to answer that type of question, but you can ask questions like, when's the last time you got angry or frustrated, or do you still experience sadness or irritation and these kinds of things? And an individual would be able to answer those kinds of questions. So whether you consider me to be enlightened or not is a choice for you to make. I know the answer to that question, but I wouldn't answer it because it's better for you to understand what enlightenment is, because then you can actually determine it for yourself and you don't have to believe what somebody else is saying. So if you'd like to know what enlightenment is, I'll teach it to you, and then you'll be able to determine for yourself whether someone is or isn't enlightened. But the only reason why you would be interested in doing that is if you were going to study with that person, right? The idea of this path isn't to go around the world and figure out who's enlightened and who's not enlightened. It's important for you to get to enlightenment. And if you're going to study with a teacher and invest a lot of time, effort, energy, and resources to learn and grow and develop, you would like to make sure they're either enlightened or very close to it. So in this book, I think it's chapter 3, actually, at the end of chapter 3, I give about 8 different questions that you could ask a potential teacher to determine whether they're enlightened or not. And then I help you to be able to see that, because some people are going to study this while I'm alive, but some people are going to study these resources when I'm dead too, so they can understand how to determine whether someone's enlightened or not. So a fully perfectly enlightened one, which is what you're seeing on the paper, on the chants, this is a Buddha. This is an individual who's gotten to enlightenment by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides. They dedicated the rest of their life to sharing their independently discovered teachings, and countless people get to enlightenment during that person's lifetime. And then they preserve their teachings in such a way that countless more people will get to enlightenment after their death. This is a very rare, unique type of individual. Some people think that everybody is a Buddha, but that's actually not true. The Buddha never said that. He actually shared how rare it is that a Buddha would exist in the world. Everybody can get to enlightenment, but they just wouldn't be a Buddha at that point. Sometimes people say you will attain Buddhahood or you have Buddha nature. This isn't actually true. The Buddha never taught those kinds of things. Those are misunderstandings of his teachings. Instead, you can get to enlightenment and you'd be an enlightened being at that point, but you wouldn't be fully, perfectly enlightened like a Buddha is fully, perfectly enlightened. Mm-hmm.
Yes. My second question is, what's the students or what's your, the people you see get enlightened, how's his family or friends or business sponsor treated? Do they see them quite differently and no longer interact with the guy be enlightened as before?
The people around an enlightened being, if they don't know what enlightenment is, which is most likely the case, they're not going to know that this person is enlightened. But what they're going to experience is someone who's very polite, very kind, friendly, respectful, someone who's very loving and compassionate, someone who's very helpful. They don't need to know that this person is enlightened, because an enlightened being is practicing the natural laws, and they're going to be able to navigate the world with ease, with just a smile, right? With wisdom and a smile. And now the people around them, they don't necessarily know what enlightenment is or that this person is enlightened, but this person will be very successful in life in terms of their relationships, because they'll be able to navigate the world and they're not causing harm to others. So an enlightened being doesn't go around and try to convince people that they're actually enlightened. If they're enlightened, they're experiencing peace and joy, and now they just go through the world with that peace and joy, and they'll have lots of success in their relationships and other ways in terms of being able to navigate the world peacefully. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're welcome. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, teacher.
It's on. It's just the signal drops out sometimes. I think you might have turned it off now. It's dead? Okay, just need some new batteries. See, the microphones are impermanent, just like the Buddha said. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So just sort of keeping on that topic about talking about whether you're enlightened or not enlightened, we read last night, I think in volume 3, was it chapter 16? Was that sort of what the Buddha was talking about when he mentioned here? Let me just take my glasses off. About a wholesome person not disclosing his own virtues.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
part of that. But you'll see actually in his teachings even more directly where he says that it's unwise to share with others that you're enlightened. He had to share with people that he was enlightened. He had to refer to himself as the Buddha. He referred to himself as the fully, perfectly enlightened when he needed to do that because prior to him, people didn't know what enlightenment was. They didn't know what a Buddha was. So he needed to explain that. And there wasn't such thing as like worldwide fame during his lifetime because not everybody spoke a similar language. And we didn't have news and information traveling around the world in the same way that we do today. But if someone got on the news and said, by the way, I'm enlightened, come talk to me, I'm enlightened, like right away, people would be like, you're not enlightened. You got too much ego. You know, you're kind of boastful and arrogant that you're enlightened, where he needed to describe to people that he was enlightened and he was a Buddha so that people could actually understand what those things are. And now that we understand what they are, that we don't need to go around and boastful and arrogant and tell people that you're actually enlightened because an enlightened being wouldn't have that. So yes, that's what you saw yesterday in that class, but you're going to see it even more directly where he talks about enlightenment itself and says that it's unwise to boast about this and tell people that you're enlightened.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome. Okay, so now we can look at the higher fetters because these are the lower fetters and you focus on those as you're developing on the path. But then there's these higher fetters. These are the next 5 pollutions. And I'll talk about 6 and 7 together because they're very similar. This is desire for form and desire for formless. This is where somebody has a desire to exist in the world. Where what the Buddha is teaching you to do is not to have craving, desire, attachment to exist in the world, but to also not have craving, desire, attachment for non-existence either. But instead to be in the present moment where you can be content and peaceful in the present moment. So desire for form is where you desire, you have a craving to exist in this world in a form existence like an animal or a human. They have physical form. Desire for formless is to have a desire to exist in one of the formless realms like hell, afflicted spirits, or the heavenly world. Now, most people who have desire for form, they will have a desire to exist in the heavenly world. But there are people in the world that have a desire to exist in hell. There are some people in the world that are like that, right? If you have a desire for existence, then that means that you're not content in the present existence. You still want another one and another one and another one. Your mind is still holding on to this existence, wanting this permanent life. So oftentimes, like, I don't know about you, but when I was growing up as a kid, I used to look at birds and I'd be like, wow, it'd be so cool to be a bird, like to fly around and look around at people. That'd be really cool, right? I really want to be a bird. That means I wasn't content in my present existence as a human being. I wanted something that I didn't have. And that's what the unenlightened mind does. You always want what you don't have. If you have $10,000 in the bank, you're going to want 50,000. And if you have 50,000, you're going to want 100,000. If you have 100, you're going to want 1,000,000, right? You just always want more and more and more. That's what the unenlightened mind does, is has craving, desire, attachment. It's like an unquenchable thirst. And one of the things that the mind can crave is existence in one of these realms. So you need to get to the point where you're content and peaceful in the present moment, in your present existence. But if you're longing and yearning for another existence, you can't be peaceful and joyful in the present existence because you're not satisfied here. You need something else. So the Buddha teaches you to not crave existence, but to not crave non-existence either, which would be like to be interested to kill yourself or something like that. Then there's conceit. What conceit is it's the measuring and comparing, thinking of yourself as being above people or below people, that you're superior to others or you're inferior to others, or you're looking down on people. And as long as you're doing this, this is part of the mind's ego, where you're being arrogant and boastful and prideful. People are going to experience that, and they're going to be disinterested in associating with you, and they're going to be pushing you aside because they're not interested in spending time with you. So your mind might do this when you have conceit. You might be judging other people and putting yourself above them or below them. And putting yourself below people is actually just as dangerous to your mind as putting yourself above people. And if you put yourself above people, that means in certain situations you're going to be putting yourself below people too. Like maybe you go into your boss's office and you're all shaken up because you think they're above you. And now you find it difficult to communicate with your boss because you think you're below them. And now they don't have confidence in you as a professional because they don't think you're able to do your job very well because you're shaken up when you're around the boss. Whereas if you just viewed the boss as being equal to everybody, now you can just treat them normally like you would any other person, right? And now you can be nice and calm and you can make wise decisions when you're having a conversation with your boss. But with this conceit, you're not going to be able to do that. You're going to be constantly measuring and comparing, putting yourself above people or below people. Where this comes from is in the animal existences that we've all had in the past, we needed conceit. We needed to have a pecking order. We needed to know when we were a pack of wolves, who's the alpha male and who's the alpha female, because they're teaching us how to hunt and survive as wolves. If we didn't know who the alpha male and alpha female were, we wouldn't have learned the things we needed to learn to be a very good wolf. Or when we were a herd of elephants, we needed to know who's the matriarch of our herd, because she's going to teach us where the food is, where the watering holes are, where the migration paths are. If we didn't know who was above us as an elephant, then we would just be roaming around the jungle, not knowing really what to do. So in the animal existences, we needed this conceit. We needed this pecking order. But when we come into this human world, our mind retains that, but we don't need it. We actually are better off without it, where we can actually see everybody as equal. So if you're putting yourself above and below people, you can see that your mind has this conceit, and it would be unwise to judge other people. And you would like to just see everybody as equal. So you see somebody outside sweeping the street, it's kind of like, hello, sir. Hello, ma'am. How are you? Good morning. Or you see the king of Thailand or the queen of Thailand walking down the street, which I don't think you will, but if you do, it's like, hello, sir. Hello, ma'am. How are you? Good morning. So you just treat everybody the same. And this is one of the reasons why your mind is so peaceful, because when you have conceit in your mind and you're in a social situation, you'll be constantly trying to figure out who's above me and who's below me. And this is a lot of work for the mind, because you're going to treat one group of people in one way and you're going to treat another group of people in another way. And your mind's having to constantly switch back and forth like this. If you've ever been to a party and people roll up to you and they're like, so what do you do? And you're like, oh, I'm a lawyer. Really? Well, I'm a doctor, right? And now there's this measuring and comparing, right? That's not what you're interested in doing, right? Because you probably don't even feel comfortable being around that type of person. Just like, please go do something else. I'd like to stay here and enjoy myself with these people who are not having all that ego and arrogance, right? So you would like to get to the point where you don't have that in your mind. Then there's restlessness. Restlessness is where your mind is overactive. And you might have these obsessive thoughts. You might even notice that you're kind of like bobbing your foot over and over and over again, or you're tapping your finger, or you're tapping a pencil. You have these repetitive movements because inside the mind is restless, but it's coming out through the body, and you're, not content, and you're just constantly rapidly moving, and you're just not comfortable in one particular spot. So you can eliminate this restlessness, this overactivity, this anxiety in the mind. And then where all of these things are coming from and all the problems that the Buddha discovered is this 10th fetter. This is the fetter of all fetters. It's often referred to as ignorance, but I suggest you think about this as the unknowing of true reality, misunderstanding, confusion, the lack of wisdom. The mind just doesn't understand what it doesn't understand. Because people are translating from the words of the Buddha into English, and this English word of ignorance, this is like a derogatory word, a degrading word, a diminishing word, and the Buddha would have never talked to somebody like that. But people today who are translating, who are unenlightened, they're actually using this word, where I can assure you a Buddha wouldn't refer to someone, an enlightened being wouldn't refer to somebody as ignorant. Instead, you can think about it as your mind has a certain amount of unknowing of true reality. It lacks wisdom. It has confusion or misunderstanding. You don't know everything there is to know about the world yet and the natural laws. And this is the fetter of all fetters. It's keeping all the other fetters in place. Because as long as you lack wisdom, you'll continue to experience the difficulties and struggles of these fetters. One of the things that the mind lacks wisdom about is these fetters, right? It just doesn't even understand you have these pollutions in the mind. That's why the mind will do things like rituals and ceremonies. But the way you eliminate this ignorance out of the mind is you get to wisdom. That's why there's no belief in the teachings of the Buddha, because you need to learn, investigate, and examine his teachings. You need to reflect on them to verify if they're true or false, and then you need to practice them. And the way you eliminate your ignorance is not through intellectual learning alone. You need a certain amount of intellectual learning, but if you just intellectually understood the teachings, you haven't eliminated your ignorance yet. You actually need to move these teachings into practice where you're making decisions through these teachings, because you can intellectually understand something, but you could actually make choices completely opposite. And now there's still ignorance in the mind. So for example, when we were growing up, we probably learned that it was unwise to use drugs and alcohol, right? We understood that intellectually, that it was unwise to use those, but we might have still did it. And that's because of our ignorance or our unknowing of true reality. So you would like to get to the point where you're not only understanding intellectually, but you're also making decisions through that, so that now this is your wisdom. And that's where the mind is fully transformed, right? So these are the higher fetters. Any questions here on any of these? No questions? Okay. All right, let me see. We have something on YouTube here. YouTube has very small text. So let me see. What is the benefit of becoming enlightened? I suggest you go back to the beginning of the talk, because I talked about that. Is Buddha exist? Yes, the Buddha actually existed during his lifetime. Okay, that other stuff you talked about is not really something that I'm going to answer or discuss. Okay. All right. So now, once you understand the fetters, as you're eliminating these fetters, your mind is actually moving through the 4 stages of enlightenment. And as you're moving through these 4 stages, you're going to experience different things. So I'll explain to you what you experience as you move through these 4 stages. And it's helpful for you to understand this, because what this is it's actually like a growth plan or progress that you're able to track your own progress, and you're able to see that you're actually growing as you're moving your mind closer and closer to enlightenment. During the lifetime of the Buddha, they refer to these 4 stages of enlightenment as stream enterer, once returner, non-returner, and arahant. And it's helpful to understand this because they actually give you meaning. Like, for example, a stream enterer. The reason why he calls it this is the first stage of enlightenment, is because once you get into the first stage of enlightenment, you will get to enlightenment. It's only a matter of time. Just like a log enters the stream and it's going to eventually get to the ocean, it's only a matter of time. The same thing is true, that once you get into this first stage of enlightenment, you will get to enlightenment. You're a stream enterer, that it's impossible for your mind to go backwards and regress, just like this log, that it's impossible for it to go upstream. It's going to only go towards the ocean, right? Same thing with this once returner, non-returner, and arahant. There's meaning behind each of these. And then there's something called a Buddha. So I'll explain this to you. So a stream enterer has eliminated the first 3 fetters of personal existence view, doubt, and wrong behavior and observances. And in that first stage of enlightenment, your discontentedness that you're experiencing, like anger, sadness, frustration, and others, is just a mere fraction of what it once was when you were off the path to enlightenment. It actually has significantly reduced by the time you've gotten to the first stage of enlightenment. And that's because you've eliminated these first 3 fetters. These first 3 pollutions are out of the mind. So you're going to be experiencing less discontentedness, but you're still experiencing discontentedness in this first stage of enlightenment. If you die in this stage of enlightenment, you will come back into the world, into the human realm, no more than 7 times. That's why you will get to enlightenment. It's only a matter of time. So the reason why you're coming back into the human realm is because by the time you've gotten to the first stage of enlightenment, you've become a better human being. That in the unenlightened state, we function very much like animals. We are not animals. We are human beings. We can actually evolve our consciousness to the point of enlightenment, where an animal is incapable of doing that in that particular existence. They're going to need to get to another existence. So becoming a better and better human being is what you're doing on this path to enlightenment. You're shedding these animalistic instincts and now gotten to the first stage of enlightenment. If you die there, you will come back into the human world. Then the second stage of enlightenment we refer to as a once returner. You've already eliminated the first 3 fetters and you thinned out number 4 and 5. Thinning out a fetter means it's not as strong, it's not as prominent as it once was. If you think back to your childhood, maybe you had a lot more anger and hostility, or maybe you had a certain amount of sensual desire where you were craving chocolate and ice cream and you just couldn't wait to get chocolate and ice cream. Or now it's like, if I have chocolate and ice cream, it's okay. It's a good day. It's fine. I can eat chocolate and ice cream. But not like when we were kids, boy, we were trying to find that chocolate and ice cream any way we could, right? Because we had that really strong central desire. And then if we didn't get it, that's where our ill will arose. We were angry and frustrated. So by the time you get to the second stage of enlightenment, you will have thinned out this central desire and ill will. It's still there. It's just not as strong as it once was. Then if you die in that stage of enlightenment, you will come back into the human world one more time and you will get to enlightenment in that existence. That's why it's called a once returner, because you're going to return back to the world one more time and attain enlightenment in that next existence. Then there's the third stage of enlightenment, referred to as a non-returner. This individual has eliminated their 5 lower fetters. And just like in the first stage of enlightenment where you've reduced your discontentedness, the same thing is true in the second stage. And then you'll really notice it in the third stage. In the third stage of enlightenment, you're only becoming discontent maybe once every 3 months, once every 6 months. It's very infrequent when you're becoming discontent, and it's very insignificant as it's occurring. In fact, the people around you might not even know that you're discontent. It's just inwardly in your own mind that you're noticing the discontentedness. And you really need to stay diligent in this third stage of enlightenment because the mind is experiencing so much peace and so much joy for 3 months or 6 months or so forth that you can become complacent and you're like, it's just a little discontentedness. It's okay, right? But you really need to stay diligent in this stage of enlightenment because you're not yet enlightened. There's still more work to do. But you've eliminated the 5 lower fetters, and this is a huge accomplishment. We refer to it as a non-returner because if you die in this stage of enlightenment, you will go to the heavenly realm and you will attain enlightenment there. Then there's something called an arahant. This is the way that people during the lifetime of the Buddha would refer to an enlightened being. Where today we would just call this an enlightened being. They refer to this person as an arahant. And this person has completely purified their mind of all the 10 fetters through the training of the Buddha, that none of these are there at all. And this individual isn't experiencing any discontentedness. It'll be 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. There's no discontentedness in the mind whatsoever. And I don't suggest to people to convince themselves that they're actually enlightened, but instead just train your mind to just think that you're never enlightened and you're always interested in growing more and more wisdom. Because to get to this point, you would have cultivated a significant amount of wisdom about the world around you. And there's no need to stop that. Just keep growing and keep developing. You will have understood the entire path to enlightenment inside and out. But there's other things in the world to be able to learn too. So just never convince yourself that you're enlightened and just always grow and develop as a human being, becoming a better and better person. Because if you convince yourself you're enlightened, one of the things that can happen is your ego can arise and now you start being arrogant and prideful or boastful. Or you become complacent, thinking that you're enlightened. You're like, I'm enlightened. I don't really have to do much meditation anymore. Well, if either of those 2 things occur, you're not actually enlightened. Because you have conceit still. You're being arrogant and prideful. Or you're complacent and thinking that, I don't have to do any of that meditation anymore. That's not for me. I'm already enlightened, right? So you're not interested in allowing those things to happen because you're not enlightened if those types of things are happening. So this individual will not be reborn in the cycle of rebirth ever again. They are outside of the cycle of rebirth. And the Buddha never taught what comes next for this type of person. He intentionally left it as an undeclared teaching. There's a part of his teachings where he says, remember what I taught. I taught this. And he points to this teaching, which is his very first teaching. He says, I taught what is discontentedness, the cause of discontentedness, the elimination of discontentedness, and the path leading to the elimination of discontentedness. But remember what I did not teach. I did not teach this. And he gives 10 individual things that he doesn't teach. And one of the things that he didn't teach is what comes next for an enlightened being, because his teachings aren't about an afterlife. It's not about being a really good person now, and then when you die, you're going to get to some glorious time frame in your life. That's not what the Buddhist teachings are about. It's about getting to a wonderful life now, in this life. It's not about an afterlife. It's about getting to a wonderful life now. So if your mind is longing, yearning for a next life and a glorious time in your next life, the mind still has desire for form and desire for formless. You're not actually enlightened at that point. So the Buddha wisely left this as an undeclared teaching, where he just didn't teach what comes next for an enlightened being. But by the time you're enlightened, your mind's so peaceful and joyful. If there's something next, okay, it's either as good as what you're experiencing now or better. And if there isn't something next, okay, that's fine as well. You're already peaceful. You're already joyful, right? So the Buddha intentionally left this as an undeclared teaching. So these are the 4 stages of enlightenment. But then there's something called a Buddha, which this is a very rare type of individual in the world, that an individual who's a Buddha, it's not a stage of enlightenment. A Buddha is actually an arahant. They fully purified their mind, but they've done it in a unique way, that they've gotten to enlightenment by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides. They then dedicate the rest of their life to sharing their independently discovered teachings with countless people, and countless people will get to enlightenment during that person's lifetime. Then they will preserve their teachings in such a way that countless more people will get to enlightenment after their death. So this is the 3 primary criteria of what make a Buddha, is that they get to enlightenment by themselves with no help from teachers or guides. They dedicate the rest of their life to sharing those independently discovered teachings with countless people, and countless people will get to enlightenment during that person's lifetime. Then they will preserve their teachings in such a way that countless more people will get to enlightenment after their death. And then there's other criteria as well that makes a Buddha, is that they have a profound memory. Even in the unenlightened state, they have a very detailed memory. They have an unlimited capacity in their mind. In fact, that's what actually allowed them to be able to get to enlightenment by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides, because they remembered countless details about their current life and their past lives too, and they accumulated all that wisdom to be able to then train their mind to get to enlightenment in their last life without the help of any teachers or any guides. Where the average person, they have a limited capacity in their mind. It's kind of like a hard drive. You might have 500 gigabytes or 1 terabyte. And when you are getting to capacity, you have to delete old files in order to store new files, right? That's why if you think back to your childhood, you just have spotty memories. You don't have real direct, clear recall of every single thing you were doing in your childhood, because you've had to delete those old files in order to store new files. In the last 5 or 10 years, you probably remember most of the things that you've been up to, but when you think back so far ago, you've had to delete those files because you have a limited capacity. But an individual who's going to become a Buddha doesn't actually have that. Then they can also quickly determine the condition of their student's mind just by spending time with them. They can see these fetters in their student's mind, and then they can offer that person teachings to be able to help them get to enlightenment. This is one of the reasons why a Buddha is so effective at helping countless people get to enlightenment, because they can observe the quality of their student's mind and then provide them teachings to be able to help them. And then they're also a living, breathing, walking example of their teachings. Whatever they teach, they're also practicing those same things, because a Buddha understands that their students are learning just as much from their spoken words as they are from their actions. So a Buddha is actually going to be teaching through their actions in the way that they actually conduct themselves in the world. And we refer to this person as a fully, perfectly enlightened one. The reason why is because by the time they get to enlightenment, they know the true path to enlightenment. They figured it out for themselves. The average enlightened being who's actually studied with another teacher, they will actually have a few things in their mind that didn't lead to their enlightenment, but they're still doing those things, just maybe out of respect for their teacher. So they might have a certain meditation that they're doing that didn't actually produce enlightenment for them, but they're still doing it because their teacher taught it to them. So maybe 70, 80, 90% of what they're doing actually led to their enlightenment, but they still have a little extra baggage. But by the time you get to enlightenment as a Buddha, which is very rare in the world, the last one that the world currently is aware of existed over 2,500 years ago, this type of individual doesn't have that extra baggage. They understand the true path to enlightenment. If they try a certain meditation and it works to help their mind, they know that's the true path. Whereas if they try a certain meditation and it's not working, they will discard it. And now by the time they get to enlightenment, they spend time illuminating that path so that other people can see clearly what it takes to be able to get to enlightenment. So that's why I refer to them as fully, perfectly enlightened, because they don't have this extra baggage. So any questions on the 4 stages of enlightenment? Anything you guys would like to ask? No questions? Okay, so now just one more thing. This will be really brief. This is how to know that you're not enlightened, okay? Because this is one of the ways that I teach is I teach what something is, and then I teach what something is not, okay? This is going to help you to understand what something is. If you're experiencing conditioned feelings of pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and neither painful nor pleasant, then the mind is not yet enlightened. Remember, a conditioned feeling is, for example, you can only be happy when certain things are occurring. That means your happiness shrinks. That if my mom and dad do this, my brothers and sisters do this, my boss does this, the weather is this, I have this much money in the bank account, I have this type of house, this type of car, then I will be happy. That's conditional happiness. And your happiness is shrinking because you're sabotaging your ability to be happy. So if you only experience these conditioned feelings, then you know that your mind is unenlightened, because your mind is going up and down and up and down. It's only a matter of time before you become irritated or frustrated about something. Then if you have a craving to tell other people that you are enlightened, then you know that your mind is not enlightened. So one of the best ways to know someone's not enlightened is they're going to tell you they're enlightened, right? So if you're like at a retreat or at the grocery store or something and someone just rolls up on you like, hey, by the way, don't tell anybody, but I'm enlightened. You know, like they're not enlightened, right? Enlightened beings, their mind is so peaceful and joyful. Why do you need to come around here and tell us you're enlightened? Just go be enlightened. Go be peaceful. You don't need to come tell us. What are you looking for? You're looking for admiration? You're looking for us to bow down to you? You don't need to come around and tell us that you're enlightened, right? I wouldn't say that to that type of person, but you just understand that an enlightened being is not going to go around bragging that they're enlightened. So if someone tells you they're enlightened, you know that they're not enlightened. And then if you're noticing complacency, where there's a lack of motivation, lack of enthusiasm, lack of initiative, because that's what the unenlightened mind does, is it'll chase. And if it's not doing that, it'll swing all the way to the other side, where it's dull and lethargic and complacent. If you're noticing this about your mind, the mind's not enlightened. And then you just know to apply effort and energy towards attaining enlightenment. So any questions at all about what enlightenment is now that we've talked about this? No questions here? Okay. I have a question coming in here on Facebook. I'm sorry, on Zoom. The question is, oh no, that's the previous question. Same one. Okay, let me see. Yeah, I actually don't see any questions. All right. So what I'm going to do then is just end by thanking all of you guys for joining. Thank you for your interest to learn and understand the teachings of the Buddha. As you would like to learn more, you're more than welcome to come here. We have lots of opportunities to learn. This evening at 6:30, I'm going to be doing meditation here at the temple with students. I'm going to be helping you to be able to understand, I think it's loving kindness meditation tonight, if I remember correctly. It might be breathing mindfulness meditation, but I'm basically going to guide you in a meditation, and then I'm just going to open up to random questions that you might have about anything and everything you would like to ask about. It syncs up with the night walking market where there's this shopping and all that kind of stuff. So if you're coming, you're welcome to stop by here at 6:30, because I'll guide you in a meditation session, and then you can ask questions if you like. I won't actually be teaching any particular topic. And then at 9 o'clock tonight, I'm going to be teaching the same topic for people who might come and join for that. And then next week on Wednesday, I'm going to be doing meditation with students at 9 a.m. here at the classroom, and then I'll just open up for any and all questions. And the following week, the first week of March, I'm going to be teaching a Foundation in the Path to Enlightenment course, which is all the foundational teachings that you need to be able to get to enlightenment. And we have other events too, like on Fridays at 6 p.m., we have a social event where we come together, we play music, we play games. You're more than welcome to join any of these things. And you'll find it on our bulletin board over there, and you'll find these events on our website, on our events calendar. So you're more than welcome to check out all of those things. What I recommend you do to get started on the path is you start with this first book, which you can actually get from our website for free. You can download it. You can take it and go print it. You can get printed versions here by just reimbursing us for the printing cost, or you can get it on Amazon. This is the best place to start. And then each Sunday, I'm going to go chapter by chapter, helping you guys to understand. So next week, I'll be teaching the Four Noble Truths, which is the very first teaching of the Buddha. And I'll be teaching that on Sunday as part of this program. And you can attend here, or you can attend online, or you can watch the recording. So whatever you choose to do, have a very wonderful and lovely rest of your day. We'll see you next time. Sawadee krap. Sawadee krap.
Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.